Who would have thought that the loudest knock on my ranch door would shake my life more than a stampede of cattle? I was standing in my kitchen that morning, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, when the sound echoed through the house. My ranch was quiet, surrounded by miles of land my family had owned for generations. So any visitor at the door was already suspicious. When I opened it, there she stood, perfectly ironed blouse, clipboard clutched tight, lips pursed so sharp they could cut glass. She introduced herself as Karen, president of the local OA, though I didn't live in a subdivision, nor was my land under any HOA authority. Yet she wasted no time telling me I was violating community standards, with unsightly barns and livestock noise. I almost laughed. My nearest neighbor lived 5 miles away, and the cattle had grazed these lands long before Karen ever set foot here. But she wasn't here to laugh. She was here to control. She handed me a notice threatening eviction if I didn't comply with association bylaws. The audacity. I stared at her, calm but burning inside. This wasn't just about my ranch. It was about her desire to dominate. And for me, it wasn't just about cattle or barns. It was about family legacy. My grandfather built this ranch with his bare hands. My father expanded it. And I promised myself I'd never let anyone take it away. Still, Karen didn't care. Every week after, she returned with a new complaint: the color of my barn roof, the dirt road not being aesthetically pleasing, even the rooster crowing at dawn. She filed papers with the county, spread lies among townsfolk, and acted like she owned my land. I knew something Karen didn't. I had spent the last 2 decades not only running this ranch but also building a quiet empire. Through years of work, I became the head of a national coalition, the very governing body that sets and enforces laws for every HOA in the country. And if Karen wanted a fight, she had no idea she was stepping into the ring with the one man who could dismantle her entire throne. But revenge wasn't my style. I wanted justice, and perhaps a lesson Karen, and others like her, would never forget. The next time Karen arrived at my ranch, she wore her power like armor. She carried a camera, snapping pictures of my land as evidence. She waved another paper in my face, declaring my time was up. That was the moment I smiled. Calmly, I invited her inside. She hesitated, but curiosity got the better of her. At my kitchen table, I slid a leather-bound folder across to her. Inside were documents stamped with federal seals, contracts with housing authorities, and my signature on directives that governed HOAs nationwide. Her face drained of color. She blinked at the papers, her lips trembling as she read the lines: National HOA Regulatory Committee, Chairman, my name. You can't be serious, she stammered. Oh, I'm very serious, I said softly. You've been trying to evict me from my own land, claiming HOA power. But Karen, I am the power behind every HOA. You answer to me. For the first time, Karen had no words. Her armor cracked. She realized she hadn't just picked the wrong battle. She'd picked the wrong man entirely. But instead of gloating, I leaned forward. Karen, let me ask you something. Why do you feel the need to control everyone around you? This ranch, this land, it's more than property. It's heritage, hard work, and sweat. Do you see that? Or do you only see rules and lines on paper? Her eyes welled, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman beneath the arrogance. She whispered, I just didn't want to be invisible. Running the HOA makes me feel important. Like I matter. It hit me then. Behind her sharp edges was someone afraid of being unseen. I could have crushed her. I could have stripped her of her position, banned her from any HOA involvement for life. Instead, I chose to teach her. I offered her a chance to work with me on community initiatives that actually help people, not hurt them. To redirect her need for control into something meaningful. Like preserving local lands, supporting small farmers, and protecting families from unfair treatment. Karen hesitated, but eventually she nodded. That day, she walked off my ranch not as my enemy, but as someone with a second chance. As for me, I learned something too. Power doesn't lie in titles or authority. True power lies in choosing compassion when vengeance is easier. And to anyone watching, remember this: no matter how much someone tries to push you down, your worth isn't defined by their rules. Stand firm. Protect what matters. And when the moment comes, use your strength, not just to defend, but to inspire. Because the loudest knock on your door might not be a threat. It might be the chance to show the world who you really are. Weeks passed after Karen's last visit. At first, I half expected her to slip back into old habits. Another knock, another paper shoved in my face. But instead, something unexpected began to happen. One Saturday morning, I looked out my window and saw Karen standing at the edge of my pasture. She wasn't there with a clipboard this time. She was holding a bag of feed, scattering it awkwardly as my cattle eyed her curiously. She wasn't scolding. She wasn't bossing. She was learning. Later that day, she approached me with a nervous smile. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, "but I want to try." That was the moment I knew the ranch had begun to speak to her. It wasn't just land. It wasn't just barns or fences. It was a place where pride, sweat, and roots mattered more than rules. Over the weeks, I taught Karen small things. How to fix a broken fence post. How to gather eggs without scaring the hens. How to walk quietly among the herd so the animals trusted her. Each lesson humbled her more than any lecture could. She started to laugh, sometimes even at herself. And then, one evening, she told me something that stopped me cold. "My father had a farm once," she said quietly, sitting on my porch while the sun set behind the hills. "But he lost it to debt. My mom blamed him, and after that, I guess I hated anything that looked unkept, messy, or out of control. It reminded me of losing everything. That's why I cling to rules. It makes me feel safe." Suddenly, I understood. Karen wasn't power-hungry. She was broken in ways she never admitted. Her obsession with control came from a wound she'd never healed. I didn't pity her. I respected her honesty, and I realized that maybe this was the reason life had sent her knocking on my door. Not to challenge me, but to change both of us. The real twist came months later. At a national HOA summit, I brought Karen as a guest. She stood on stage trembling, speaking to hundreds of HOA leaders about what she'd learned at my ranch. Instead of talking about bylaws and penalties, she spoke about people, about legacy, dignity, and listening before judging. She told them how her heart had been changed, how she wanted to see communities empower instead of control. The room went silent. Then came applause, louder than I had heard in years. That day, Karen transformed from a woman who once tried to evict me from my own ranch into someone who could change the entire direction of HOA communities across the nation. And me, I learned one final truth. Sometimes the people who knock hardest against us aren't meant to destroy us. They're meant to awaken something greater inside us. The weeks following the HOA showdown brought something I hadn't expected. Peace. For the first time in years, the neighborhood didn't feel like a prison built on petty rules and fear. People were smiling, talking, letting their kids play outside without worrying about citations for noise disturbance. But peace didn't mean the war was over. Karen had gone quiet, too quiet. And if there was one thing I learned, it was that people like her never just walked away. They plotted. One morning, I walked outside to find my fence slashed, spray paint scrawled across the side of the old farmhouse, message.HOA. I clenched my jaw, but instead of anger, I felt pity. Karen was lashing out like a queen stripped of her crown, desperate to claw back what she'd lost. But this wasn't about me anymore. It was about the community, and if I fell into her trap of rage, she'd win back the fear she'd thrived on. So I didn't fight fire with fire. Instead, I rebuilt. I fixed the fence, painted over the slurs, and waved at neighbors as they passed. One by one, they came to me with their own stories. About how Karen had fined them for planting the wrong flowers, or humiliated them at meetings, or even threatened to foreclose when they fell behind on fees. Some were too scared to fight her. Some had even thought about selling and leaving. That's when the idea struck me. If Karen could build a reign of fear with her rules, I could build a future with fairness. My grandfather's land had space, more than enough to expand. Instead of letting the HOA choke the neighborhood, I started planning community gardens, shared spaces, and even affordable rentals for families who'd been priced out. But as word spread, Karen struck again. She showed up at my porch one stormy evening, rain soaking her blazer, her hair plastered to her face. For once, she didn't have her clipboard or her smug smile. Her eyes were wild. "You don't belong here," she hissed, her voice trembling with something that almost sounded like desperation. "This was supposed to be my community. Do you hear me? Mine! I kept it perfect. I kept it in order. And you've ruined everything." I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I saw the truth beneath the anger. Karen wasn't just power hungry. She was afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of a world that didn't bend to her will. "You kept it perfect for yourself," I said softly. "But you never cared about the people living in it. That's why you lost them. Not because of me, not because of my grandfather. Because of you." She shook her head violently, tears mixing with the rain. No, I won't let this happen." And just like that, she turned and vanished into the storm. The next morning, word spread fast. Karen had packed up and left town overnight. No one saw her go, and honestly, no one mourned her absence. The community center, once her throne room, became a real gathering place. We held dinners there, set up after-school programs, and even celebrated holidays as one big family. For the first time, laughter replaced whispers, and hope replaced fear. One evening, as I stood at the edge of the field watching children chase fireflies, I thought about my grandfather again. About the nights we'd sat on this very porch, him telling me stories about the land, about legacy, about standing tall even when the world tried to knock you down. I finally understood what he meant. Inheritance wasn't just about property, it was about responsibility, about taking what was handed down to you and making it better for those who came after. Karen had tried to rule with fear. But fear dies. Legacy, that lasts forever. And as the lights of the community glowed against the darkening sky, I knew this wasn't just land anymore. It was home.